Where is God? I'm glad you see that you made it to the session of Leaving the Church for Good, where today's question is, where is God? Let's start with the church view. How does the church describe God? The church teaches that God is unhappy with humanity and separates himself from humanity. And they continue to teach that the only way to God and heaven comes from praying to Jesus as if he's an idol. In sharp contrast to the church view, Jesus teaches us that God is in and around us all. That should raise questions for us. If God is in and around us, what form would God be in? Shouldn't we be able to sense God in us? This is a good reason for each one of us to explore the connection between our spirit and what God may be. A good place to start is at a funeral, because it's there where we see the separation of body and spirit. All of the attendees, except for one, will leave with their body and their spirit intact. When we're clear on the fact that our physical body has absolutely no power without our spirit, then we've already gained some clarity on God and what I call practical spirituality. We can choose to make it more complicated and mystical, but why? You see, when Jesus was teaching his disciples to do what he was doing, he started from his perspective that they could do what he could do and more. No different than what he teaches us. And he was able to teach them the basics in under a year. So if we were to ask ourselves a logical question about this, we can ask, so what do we have to work with to do what Jesus did and more? Well, we have our physical body and we have our spirit, and we know that the physical body is useless without the spirit. We also know that God is in and around everything in the universe. In addition to that, we know that Jesus, through the God in him, the same God that he teaches us is in us, helped, healed, and inspired people. There are no other tricks up his sleeve, so to speak, other than that he had a very strongly developed sense of his spirit. Where does that leave us today as we look at what's possible in our daily lives? At the very core of understanding where God is comes the understanding that the majority of our power comes from our spirit. So understanding our spirit in more detail becomes very useful. The first detail about spirit revolves around the topics of what Jesus called peace and sin. Peace is pretty self-explanatory, and sin is what we refer to today as unease. For example, anything that disrupts our peace, such as jealousy, anger, stress, etc., are all forms of sin. And when we allow unease into our lives, we are living in sin. Why is the understanding of peace and sin critical to understanding our powers of spirit? Unease distracts us from the true power we have in our spirit, whereas when we're in a state of peace, we're able to hear and feel our spirit. Now, to keep these classes short and useful, we'll round this out for today with this practical exercise. Start to observe. In other words, start to become consciously aware of when you're in a state of peace and when you're in a state of unease. If your goal is to be in a state of peace rather than to live in sin, observe what stops you from returning back to a state of peace. What you might discover is that our ego stands in the way, that sometimes we just have to stay in that unease. But it's in a state of peace where we have our real power. In our next class, we're going to talk about what Jesus teaches us about Satan. And every weekend we have free online conversations on all things related to life. So feel free to join us there. As a foundation for these conversations, we use the 24 life ingredients, which are what life teaches us. They're in complete alignment with what Jesus teaches us. There are also the free classes in the mini-series, and each are designed to bring clarity about the 24 life ingredients. You'll find those at my YouTube channel, John Verway 2020. And the easiest way to connect with our community, so you get the latest videos, and that is to follow on YouTube, and also check out our website at mylifesoup.com, just exactly how it sounds, mylifesoup.com, or johnverway.com, and you'll have more links to our community. I'm John Verway, and I wish you all the best on your journey.